Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our latest edition of the Esri Public Safety Webinar Series. Our webinar today is titled Intel Ops and Analysis with ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence. My name is Carl Walter. I'm the Director of Homeland Security Solutions here at Esri on our public safety team, and I'll be facilitating our call today. Joining me on the call and on our presentation will be Natalie Fairstein, and she's our lead product owner for ArcGIS for Intelligence. And also joining us is Rob Fairstein, who is our lead solution engineer on our public safety team. There's a reason why I picked Natalie and Rob for this webinar, because as the product owner and lead for ArcGIS for Intelligence, Natalie leads and runs the team that actually builds this solution. And Rob, as our lead solution engineer on the public safety team, Rob is an integral part of actually gathering requirements from our law enforcement, from our global law enforcement community, understanding their requirements and actually feeding them to the team, as well as helping enable some of you folks that use these tools every day. Today's discussion, we're going to go through an overview that Natalie will present on ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence. We're going to then switch it over to Rob, where we will actually get into the technical demonstration. And we'll go through basically three components or three modules. One that is a focus on pattern of life, where we'll be using call detail records and GPS to understand how to extract meaningful information during a investigation. We'll then have a piece on link chart to show some of our capabilities in understanding relationships. In this example, it will be with gang relationships, and conflicts. And then we will have a third module, which will involve things such as batch import, conditions and alerts, and understanding timelines. Those will be the parts that Rob walks us through on the technical demonstration point. And throughout this presentation, you folks have the ability to submit questions to us and to break up the call as questions come in. We will actually stop the presentation and entertain some of those questions two or three times throughout this webinar. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Natalie Fairstein, and she's going to walk us through an overview of ArcGIS for Intelligence.
Thanks, Carl. Okay, so my name is Natalie Fairstein, and I appreciate Carl inviting me to come and talk to everyone, kind of give you a rundown for what ArcGIS Solutions for Intelligence is, as well as ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence. So ArcGIS Solutions for Intelligence, we build lots of awesome software at Esri, and one of the ways that we help our customers understand how that software can be used in many different industries and different practices is through our solutions effort. ArcGIS Solutions for Intelligence focuses on the needs specifically of our law enforcement intelligence community, as well as commercial intelligence, civilian intelligence, and military intelligence. So we go out and we work with people out in the field, understand their requirements. What are they trying to do? What tools do they need? What are the workflows we need to support? And then we go back and we configure our software and build specialized tools and applications that helps people in these communities get their job done. So ArcGIS Solutions for Intelligence is just one of the many solutions that we offer. We also have water and government utilities, which includes electric and gas, and telecommunications, as well as defense solutions, and just recently business solutions, as well as our intelligence solutions. ArcGIS Solutions for Intelligence, our flagship product, if you will, is ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence. And if you've heard about ICAP before, the intelligence configuration for ArcGIS Pro, it's the same product, just renamed. So ICAP at 2.4 became ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence. It is the Esri's multi-int workstation for the intelligence professional. So it helps you do everything from creating and managing intelligence information to being able to visualize that information in lots of different ways, including maps, charts, and timelines. So you can do your spatial, temporal, relational, and even predictive analysis. And then be able to produce and disseminate intelligence products. So after you've done the analysis, you've come to your assessments, and you need to be able to share those out with others in your organization. And ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence supports all of those workflows. So the tools that ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence includes, we kind of broke them up into these different groups, if you will. So importing and converting data, right? So a lot of times this takes up a lot of your time. You get data in from a lot of different providers. You have to understand that data, massage that data a little bit so that you can bring it in and then use a lot of different layers so you can overlay them and start to get a feel and understanding for that situation. So importing and converting data is a major workflow that we support, and we've built tools that allow you to just point to a folder and bring in a bunch of data at once, even though you might not know what's in that folder. Table to features, so if you have information that you're bringing in spreadsheets, being able to bring in that data in a spreadsheet form and then plot it on the map with one tool. GPX to features, so if you're working with devices out in the field and you're collecting GPX information, being able to bring that in and again plot that on the map. Text to features, so our locate XT capability, which allows you to look at unstructured data either from a website or a document, even a PowerPoint presentation, bring in that information and then parse out the location information as well as some contextual text there that sits with it, and then be able to plot that on the map and use that in downstream analysis. We also have tools that help you actually perform analysis, right? So you've got your data in, you've plotted it on the map, or maybe not, maybe it's unstructured and it's sitting there in a table form, and now you need to perform analysis. So everything from counting incidents and kind of getting a feel for where the activity is happening, to looking at cell phone patterns, and Rob's going to show you that today. Finding overlap, so if you've got a bunch of polygons that are sitting on top of each other, and if you work in the signal space, you have to do this a lot, where you want to be able to see how many overlaps are happening. Blind spot analysis. So a lot of people don't know what this term means, because I don't think there's an actual term for it, so we kind of made it up. But blind spot analysis is you have operational forces out there and assets, whether that be patrols or other static assets like cameras set up, and you need to know where are the areas where you don't have coverage, right? So where are the areas that are blind? You don't have people there, therefore you don't know what's going on. This will help you determine where your blind spots are. And then visibility, density, hotspot analysis, all of the things that you've come to expect from professional GIS tools. Edit and create. So being able to quickly mark up your map and with features, right? So whether you're bringing in data from reports or you're collecting information over time and you need to quickly add symbol to the map, we have several symbology sets that are specifically created for this community. Producing and disseminating reports. Again, I mentioned, once you've done your analysis, you need to be able to get that out to other people in your organization or even people outside your organization. And we provide tools and tasks that help you do that. Speaking of tasks, if you've never used tasks in ArcGIS Pro before, they're a cool way to make documentation more dynamic, right? So instead of reading through a long PDF, you can walk through a task, and it's going to step you through each step, and helping you build muscle memory so you know where are the tools that you need to use in this workflow. So in addition to the tools that help you bring in the data and do analysis and share your information, we have lots of different ways to visualize that information within ProIntel. So the link chart, where you can view and edit your spatial and non-spatial relationships. Timeline, being able to look at your data and visualize it in chronological order from left to right. Charts and graphs. So Rob will show you a few of those. We have the calendar heap chart, a time wheel, and a lot of these things that are very useful when trying to look at pattern of life and understand where people are and when. 2D and 3D map. Of course, if we didn't have a map, it'd be weird since we are Esri. and table. So being able to look at your data in table form, quickly update and modify that data. Okay, so ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence, though, is not, while it is our, our desktop application that's for multi-analysis, it's also part of ArcGIS for Intelligence, which is an intelligence system that just so happens to be powered by a GIS. So it's a system that helps you connect and process data, whether that data is coming in, it's file-based, or it's coming in from a server somewhere, whether you control the data or you just have read access, you can bring that in and start to use that. It helps you visualize and interrogate the data. So you're looking at the data, you have tools to be able to interact with that data and start to understand the situation and then know what questions you need to ask next. Identifying unknown patterns and relationships, as well as being an interface between collectors, consumers, and producers of intelligence. So what do I mean by that? Well, because it's part of the entire system, we have web apps that help consumers and producers of intelligence be able to quickly log in, see a situation through maybe a dashboard. And we also have mobile apps that help collectors get out there in the field, collecting information, taking pictures, and being able to feed that into the system. And then also the capability to present those results to decision makers, because intelligence is really nothing without being able to push that information out so that action can be had. So if I just kind of give like a little conceptual diagram here, we have ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence. That's fully connected to the ArcGIS Enterprise, where you can get that field input data from the ArcGIS Enterprise or through the desktop and then push it into the enterprise. Important to note, though, this dashed line is there for a reason. So while ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence can work completely disconnected. So the internet's not a requirement. If you've got to shut down the lid of your laptop and get on a plane and go do your business elsewhere, you can do that. If the power goes out and you still need to be able to work on backups and do your work, you can do that. But you can take full advantage of the enterprise if your environment supports that. And then of course ArcGIS being what it is, you can bring in all those authoritative system data sets, whether that's coming from people with groups within your organization or coming from other agencies, and you need to bring in that information and be able to visualize it within the enterprise, you can do that. And because of that, you're able to leverage all the other apps that Esri provides in order to collect, process, visualize, exploit, and communicate all that information that the organization needs to be aware of. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carl, who will walk us into the next section.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. I did mention to our participants that we accept questions throughout the webinar. A couple came in, Natalie, that I think are higher level questions that might be appropriate to answer right now. And the first question that I'm going to throw at you is ICAP and ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence different products?
So then they're not different products, it's just the evolution. So ICAP existed for a few releases prior to 2.4, and then at 2.4, ICAP was renamed to ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence.
Okay, and then a similar question, kind of on the administrative side, does Pro require a separate license from, does Pro Intel require a separate license from ArcGIS Pro?
It does not. So your ArcGIS Pro licensing will be leveraged by ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence. It does work on basic, standard, and advanced. Of course, there's a capability within ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence that does need to be licensed with ArcGIS Pro licenses and extension licensing. Okay.
All right. And we're going to now transition to the first phase of our technical demonstration, and Rob is going to walk us through how ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence can help you with workflows related to pattern of life. Rob, we'll turn it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Carl. So the first thing I want to start off with real quick is the different kind of look and feel of Pro Intel as soon as you open it up. So when you open up Pro Intel, you're going to get a different experience on the home page. First, you're going to see all your projects in a carousel down here at the bottom. And then you're also going to have project templates. So these can be deployed by the organization to prepackaged data feeds and different tools or layout views or tasks for a particular workflow. So these can be customized for workflows within the organization to kind of set that foundation and that starting point for an analyst to start. So they're not starting from scratch every time, or a newer analyst who's not as familiar with the tools or even the workflow can jump right in and be more productive. The other thing is the background image, which this can be easily customized, which we're seeing a lot of you, tailored for a program of record, or just to kind of put your own branding on it for your organization, so that when you open it up, it has that look and feel of your brand. So with that, we'll open up my project, and we'll start talking about a little about some of the pattern of life workflows. For this first part, we're going to really focus on the new cell phone tools, and then a little bit with GPS and analyzing that for pattern of life. So to save time, I am not going to run all of these tools because nobody wants to sit and watch that. So up on my data tab, I'm going to go to the cell phone conversion and open up import cell sites. So real quick, I'm going to show you the data. So for those of you that have worked with cell phone data and received call detail records, you're going to get a lot of information related to the cell sites or the towers. Most carriers don't filter that information out for you to what's relevant for your investigation or your analysis. You have to do that yourself. So that's what these tools are designed to do, is to help you take the abundance of data that it's given to you by the provider and really hone that in to what's relevant in the call detail record. And that's what we're seeing here is the call detail record, just showing the interaction between the handset and using the network to contact other numbers, and then the infrastructure between the switch, the sector, and the tower for both the beginning and the end of the communication of how that call was handled. So no locational information within the call detail records. So the tools are going to associate the transactional information between the handsets, the numbers they call, and the network, and then the spatial information that's located here within all that infrastructure. So when you open up the Import Cell Sites tool, it's going to ask you for the table of information. So we're going to go ahead and open up. And point to that data. And here we go. We'll point to my cell towers. And it's going to look for a particular worksheet. I think I have about 12,000 records in this spreadsheet, so it's going to take a second to recognize all that data. Okay, so once I select that spreadsheet, it's going to automatically name my output. So it's going to create a point feature class for each cell site or cell tower. We use the term cell sites because sometimes it's not always a tower. It's fixed to a billboard or a building or things like that. And then for the output for the sectors, which is kind of that pie that's associated with the antenna to give you an idea of the coverage area. And then you can come in and pick the identifiers. So the three important ones for this particular data set are going to be the site identifier, which is the cell field. And then we're going to have the sector identifier. And then last will be switch. So the reason this tool is designed to be flexible is because the carriers don't have a standard data schema that they use to organize their data. They organize it, I think, all of them in different ways. So the tool is designed to be flexible so the analyst can point to the right fields and make sure that the tool is adaptive for the different types of the data models. X and Y for the location of the cell sites. And then projection, so we're going to go ahead and we'll go with Web Mercator on this one. And actually, yeah, and the same thing here. Okay, so once you could click through all these options, once you get all your options selected, and you decide to run the tool. Let's go down here to radius. I like to use 1 mile for my sectors and azimuth field, and I think that is it. So it takes a little while to fill all this out, but it's a lot of data, and like I said, it has to be adaptable for all the different formats that this data comes in, and you hit run. This usually takes, I think for me, it took about 5 minutes tops to run, but we're just gonna go ahead and show what that looks like. So for this particular carrier, it's the entire state of California as well as Las Vegas. So now that we have all of that mapped out for all the cell towers, we'll open up the Import Cell Phone Records tool. And what this is going to do is allow us to look at all the call detail records and then just pull out the information that's relevant from the network and associate that to all the call information so we can begin our analysis. And then we'll pull up our spreadsheet here in a second and get the right one. There we go. And then all I have to do is hit the drop down, and it's going to allow me to pick the point feature class that I need. Let's go. Sites, and we'll do sectors. Okay, so that's the output from the first tool I ran. And then I can name my output, and then the same thing here. We're going to want to select all of our fields. Actually, let's go with switch first. Switch, sector, and I'm using the beginning sector for my analysis. And we'll go with site. Okay, so now that we've gone through, and this is tower, okay. Then you need the subscriber ID field, which we have. And then I think we need the destination, which I think is receive, yep. And I think we're good, then you just hit run. So now that we've sat through that, you pick all the right fields, it takes a little while, that works with my data, I hit run. Let me turn off this one, and then you get this output. So now we have a more localized data set that represents the data we care about for this particular incident. So let me zoom in on that. There we go. I'm going to turn the sectors off, which you can see is that pie shape, and it symbolized to represent a count of how many times that handset was active within that particular sector. So obviously this area right here is most likely where they either live or work due to the amount of activity. So I'll turn off the sectors. Okay. So that, let me pull up the attribute table so you see what we got at the end of this. So it didn't just take the sectors or the site and create one feature. For every record in the call detail records, which I think it's a little over 1,200 here, it creates, with the attributed information, a feature. So for every call transaction, there's a feature on the map with that call transaction. And the other important thing here, I'm going to right click, go to my properties, and I want to enable time, which I've already done here. You just do so by hitting the layer time field. So having time enabled is really important. So we're going to look at this data spatially. We're also going to look at it temporally, and then we're going to look at some relational aspects as well. So first, let's take a look at the data clock. So right-clicking on my call detail records. Actually, first before we do that, so with this scenario, what we did is we just kind of threw a shooting incident out there. And for those of you that use the software, creating feature information, it's a lot of clicking. It's not the hardest thing to do, but it's just a lot of clicking. So one of the things Natalie mentioned earlier about edit and create and enabling the end user. So under the edit toolbar here, we have layer templates. So all I did was go to incidents and double click on this, and it opened up this palette with this new set of symbology all within ProIntel. And so then I could just start creating my data on the map. So go up here to create. And now I can start dragging and dropping from this palette and start creating data instead of going in and having to create that feature class from scratch, which is great. So we're just going to go ahead and keep this open for a shooting that, here, let me zoom out a little bit. That happened down here, that's southeast of San Jose at the bottom of my screen. So we have the call detail record from a suspect for a few weeks around this period of time of a shooting, and we want to correlate their locational information with this particular incident. So let's take a look at this data temporally. So I'm going to right click, go over here to create chart. We're going to go to data clock. Click on the properties for the data clock. And I'm just going to go ahead and use my start time for these calls and pull up days for the rings. Let's bring that up over here, and we'll do a side-by-side. And one of the great things is that all these charts and additional views of the data that we're going to create interact with one another. So as I see these kind of hotspots, these temporal hotspots, if you will, of activity on the handset, I can click on those and get an idea of, you know, the locations of where those activities occurred. And by also looking at the data clock, I can see from the user's use pattern that they typically go to bed around midnight, and then usage really doesn't start until around 9, 10 a.m. So we can assume that they're probably sleeping. Another way to look at time, again, go to create chart. We have the calendar heat chart. Similar property setup as the data clock. And let's look at this by, here we go. So now we're looking at the days and looking at the activity, hour of the day, by day. And we can see on Monday, for whatever reason, there's more use. Actually, and then in the evening, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, heavy use. And again, you can click on these and it interacts with the map. And looking at, this is right before bedtime, so it looks like that individual's home is right in this area right here, just north of Palo Alto. So let me clear that. Okay, so one of the great things about ProIntel is the timeline capability. So we've looked at a couple different charts, but let's go ahead and take this information and put it on a timeline. So in my analysis tab, I'm going to come over here to timeline. Let me move that down a little bit. I'm going to add a layer. So all my layers that are time enabled, which we already enabled the call detail records, earlier I time enabled the shooting incident. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab the shooting incident real quick and hit apply. So we'll see where that occurs. And then we'll add another layer. And this will be for our call detail records. And we'll apply that. And so now all of our call information, every transaction that takes place on the map, is now charted out across this timeline. I'm going to add shooting again so it pops up on top. It was buried. There we go. So now we can see where the shooting occurs in relationship to all these calls. So let's zoom in a little bit. We can also use the zoom in tool. If I need to zoom out, we have a full extent. If I want to do a selection, I can. And everything I select here on the timeline is going to select on the map. If I need to move, if I zoom in, I can also navigate manually. And if I want to export this to an image, I can as well. Okay, so let's take a look at the time around the shooting. So I'm just going to grab the select tool, and we'll start about here, and we'll go a little after the shooting, just to focus in on the individual's call detail history before and after the shooting to see if there's correlation. So there is some correlation, but we're also looking at, what is that, coming up almost a 12-hour span of time, probably about 10 hours, which we need to go down a little further to get a better understanding. So for this, I'm going to do a definition query. I want to focus in and just look at the 11th of September to see this individual's activity. So one of the things I like, for those of you that use definition queries, now they've made it so that it's on the toolbar. So coming up here to data, I already have a definition query I can select from. If I want to create new definition queries, I can just open it up right here and either edit or create new definition queries. But I can just click on this definition query I've already created. And now we're looking at just the 11th of September for this individual. And you can see on the timeline, it's been filtered out as well to only show that particular day. Another tool we have is incident sequence. This is the connect the dot tool. I'm going to put the call detail records in there. That's going to automatically give me a name for the output. You can change that if you want. And then the sort field, which you're going to use your time. I'm going to hit run. And when I get done, it's going to look like this. Let me turn off that. So it's going to take all the points of entry and it's going to sequentially number them. So from 1 to whatever it is in this case, 20-something, 30-something. And throughout the day, it'll do connect the dots to all of those points to show you where that individual moved over the course of that time period. It is a little busy, but you do get the general idea that I know from looking at this data, and this is their home. They started at their home and then moved up near Fremont for a little while, then was down around San Jose where the shooting occurred, and then went back to their home. So, but you want to present this information for evidence purposes or an intelligence brief or whatever it may be. We went ahead and just grabbed the time for each of those occurrences of information and just simplified that for the end product. So here we have the shooting, which occurred at 7:55. The individual was at their home at 11:24, and you can see they progressed throughout the day. And this chart just simply explains that they were down here in San Jose between 3:40 and 6:45, and then just after the shooting, they were just right past the incident, and then they went right back to their home right after the shooting. And so there is a direct correlation in time and space for this individual to be in the vicinity of the shooting. The great thing about this is trying to explain the spreadsheet. Oh, wrong one. We'll go. Trying to explain this spreadsheet to a jury, not going to happen, but taking a map that simply puts a few points and clearly depicts the incident and this individual or the suspect's patterns or pattern of life for that particular time of day around the incident is a very powerful tool and capability. And I know a lot of you have been asking for more tools and more demonstrations for pattern of life, so hopefully this is beneficial. The other thing I did as well, so taking that same incident information, the layer template, and then just grabbing some of that symbology and data sets, and all I did was click over the call detail history. So instead of seeing these towers or the symbology, now we actually have, through research, you can identify, what these locations are. Maybe it's an associate's house, maybe they're driving at that time, maybe they're at a cafe, but just using the information to spatially depict, what these locations actually mean and what that activity was. So with that, I'm going to move to another example real quick. So this is with the call detail records. The other example I want to show you is using GPS points. So when you work for Esri, you use our products. We have a product called Tracker for mobile tracking. Our team in DC used that. So I took all their data to support this demo. So when you use our products at Esri, you get put in a demo. So that's what this is. Our office in DC is right over here in Vienna. So what does that look like? For this, we just grabbed one individual out of the DC team, and over time, it's a lot of data. So for whatever reason, some people still want to see that heat map. So yes, you can create a heat map and show the concentration of movement. But let's go ahead and look at, let me show you the tool first. So a new tool that's available is called Tracks from Points, which is great. We're going to go ahead and take our point data. The date field creates an output, and you just run the tool. And when you get done, it looks like this. This data set goes from Hawaii all the way to DC. So I'm going to give it a second to render.
Hey, Rob, while that's drawing, I have a couple questions that came in.
Yeah.
And I think some, just for a quick break here, some probably for Natalie and maybe some for you. And there's about 10 questions, so I'm going to consolidate, but they were pertaining to training. What is the current available training for ArcGIS Pro for Intelligence, and what is the future plans for training? So maybe Natalie, you may want to address that one.
Yeah, I can take that one, Carl. So we've done several webinars over the last couple of years. So you can find those, up on the Esri site, or just by searching for them. And we try to keep the webinars more of like training than just a broad overview and mostly slides. So you can actually see how the tools are being used and what you would use them for. So those are helpful. We also have a website where it has some overviews of some of the workflows that you can do and what tools you would use. I would also encourage you to just install the product and use the tasks. The tasks will walk through some of these workflows, and we're always taking feedback on what tasks to introduce, what workflows to support through the tasks. And again, that's a way to kind of look at kind of see documentation in a more dynamic way. As far as like training that you can purchase, so whether it's on-site training, that's instructor-led, we're still working on that and building out that curriculum. If that's something your organization's interested in, we would love to work with you on that and know exactly what you're looking for so that we can build out the right courses.
Okay, perfect. And then Rob, if your data's ready, we can keep going, or I have one more question.
Oh, yep, I'll jump into this real quick and finish up this section, and we'll go back to questions. So okay. The Track from Points tool, so it took all those points and created line segments between all of them, and then calculated the velocity, acceleration, the speed, and the time in seconds that between each of those points. And so with this data, we're able to depict, how fast people are driving, how long they're in a particular area, things of that nature. And real quick, the other tool I'd like to show, so this one's actually a sneak peek. I believe this is going to be included in Pro Intel, the next version, but I really like it for pattern of life. And then that's just a cluster analysis tool that takes all that point data and kind of gives you summary circles with the counts of points. And let me zoom out a little bit so you can see some of the other. So you can see, okay, it was Southern California, some Denver activity, a lot over in Vienna. There's a trip to Hawaii. Let's go ahead and zoom into the DC area. And so you can see all the locations from this individual and kind of their anchor points. So obviously up here in Frederick, that's probably where they live. There's a lot of activity, or maybe there's a relative or something. And then over here in Leesburg, there's a lot of activity as well. So we can easily start to take that and then, again, dropping in those points to start identifying, school and work and home and, places that they frequent, and known associates and things like that, and understanding that pattern of life for the individual and where their behaviors and all this data, and to make it more meaningful and clear, because these 5 or 6 points are a lot easier to understand than the 20,000 that we were analyzing. So with that, Carl, I'll turn it back to you for questions.
Okay, and Rob, while you're transitioning to the next module, I think this question would be good for Natalie. And the question is, does the tool support data from multiple cell phone providers?
So yes, so Rob showed you the tools and walking through the tool and being able to pull out the different parameters based on the fields that you care about or that you need in order to create those outputs. The reason why the tool is built that way is because every single cell phone data provider does it differently. So when you go and you get a call detail records back, you get the tower information back, they will not be in the same format across different providers, and sometimes the providers themselves even change up their schema and their format that they give you that data in. So we wanted to make the tool flexible so that it could work with any provider at different times, historical data as well as new data in the future.
Okay, and then Rob, this probably is directed at you, and there may be no easy answer here, but has this tool been used to support investigations in court? And I'll consolidate a couple more of those questions. How do I get help for case support?
That's a great question. So yes, I believe the numbers would be better coming from Natalie, but I believe it's been deployed over 20,000 times across mostly, I'd say, the national security and definitely law enforcement at the state and local level. And so there's a lot of use. It is a new product, but yes, we have seen this been used for investigations. If you want support for an investigation, and I guess it depends on what you mean by support, if you want somebody to work with you and go on the stand, there are business partners that do that we could hook you up with, or just companies out there that do that. If you just want help with the tools, I would definitely contact your account manager and request some support. I'm sure there's solution engineers, and I'd be happy to work with you and take those use cases and probably feed into a webinar to really take Pro Intel and highlight and focus the investigatory workflows. So yeah, just let us know.
Perfect. And also you can reach out to us. I mean, I know we've had people admitted on the stand as expert witnesses, and we've had the technology accepted in court, and we can walk you through that process and how that was done in at least one state. So I will switch this back over to you, Rob, and as we transition into a really interesting topic, especially when it comes to GIS, because a lot of times the concept of link analysis is usually more about relations and less about geography, but we're going to talk about what we call link charts, and I'll turn it back over to you, Rob.
Hey, I appreciate that, Carl. And we'll keep this one quick. So taking some relational information, say it's some rival gangs, the suspect for the shooting is in one of those gangs. So let's take what we know about the individual, their associates, and the victim from the shooting, from the rival gang and their associates, and just put that on a link chart and get an idea of what that would look like. And so we're going to come back again to create chart. So we've looked at it spatially, this information. We've looked at temporal, so now it's the relational. And I guess it doesn't want us to do that.
And I have, while you're doing that, Rob, I have a question maybe for Natalie as you're preparing this. You reference link charts and link analysis. What is the difference? And then I'll combine this with another question, Natalie, if you just want to talk about what is the future, as you're the one that's going to be developing these things. What is the future of link analysis at Esri?
Sure. So we've been, I've been at Esri for 12 years, and before that I was a user, and for a long time we've had people asking, I just want to look at how the different entities and different types of information that I have, and the relationships between those. And I don't want to do that in a GIS-y way. I don't want to create a relationship class or try to do it in some funky way, because it's not really meant for that. I want to just be able to visualize those relationships. So we first started with link charts. Link charts, I would not consider link charts to be link analysis. Link analysis is being able to infer, connections, infer relationships from typically large data sets, and be able to then pull out statistics information and look at a histogram and be able to really interact with your data and find answers to pretty finite questions. Link charts, on the other hand, is just another visualization of your data, right? So you got your data on the map, and that's great because you can see it spatially, where are these locations that are associated with these individuals or these things. And then I want to also see the organization or the relationships between those entities. So that's what a link chart does. And as Rob's showing you right now, you can see how this gang, or these two different gangs, what the structure looks like. You can interact with both the link chart and the map. Now, going forward, we are absolutely diving into link analysis. And the current version of link charts is really just a visualization of a single layer. The next version coming out in 2.5, you'll be able to bring in multiple layers and then build out those relationships between those layers and the entities that are contained within all those feature layers.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Yes. And Rob, are you ready? Because I have one more question if you're not.
Yep. So I went through the workflow real quick. I went through the link chart properties. It's fairly simple. Just pick the name, the label of the individuals, and then the associates field, which ties them together, and I hit apply. And that's what got me this chart. I have a few different layouts that I can choose from. And then, like Natalie said, what I select in the link chart selects on the map. And then what I select on the map selects on the link chart. And the great thing about this is that you don't always have location-based information for your threat groups or gangs or whatever it is that you're tracking. So that information can stay here and be managed within like a link chart interface and focus on the relational aspects of that. And then anything that is spatially associated with that can be highlighted within the map. So,
right. Just to clarify real quick, Rob, can you select every single entity on the map? So you can see that Rob selected every entity that we have a known location for, right? But then there's a lot of other entities, these individuals and the gangs that we don't have a known location for, but we do know that they're part of the organization. So a link chart allows you to visualize those that we have a known location for, but also those that we don't. So they're not just hidden inside an attribute table somewhere. They're actually, here, they're shown in a link chart, and now you can either update them, the location when you finally, gather that information, or you can just see like what, we know this individual exists, we know they're part of this organization, we know their role in the organization, we just don't know where they are, physically located.
So Carl, did you have any more questions, or do you want to continue to the third and final portion of the presentation?
I have one more question, and I'm going to, again, probably for Natalie, and you may have started to talk about it, and again, I'm going to combine two questions here. What is the future of link charts on the web? And then can you also just expand on that to address another question, the relationship between ArcGIS Pro for Intel and WebGIS? Maybe if you can try to handle both of those.
Sure. So currently you could share a link chart as like an image into a story map. I know that's not the full extent of what people want to do with it. So we do want to explore what it would look like to be able to, go from a link chart in Pro Intel and then share that up to the web. So maybe you can't, do everything you could do within Pro Intel, but you can, interact with it, select it, click on it, and get some detailed information. So we are looking at the feasibility of that. In addition, Insights has a link chart capability that's worth checking out. We would still have to do some work to, be able to quickly share a link chart from Pro Intel into Insights. If you have workflows where that's what you're wanting to do, or vice versa from Insights into Pro Intel, we'd love to talk to you about that. We want to make sure that we would build out any capability exactly to the needs of the community.
All right, great. And then for our third and final module, Rob's going to go through how to handle a very, very common problem. We'll call it the batch import feature. How do we handle all these different sources of information, different layers, CSV, all these different file types and bring them quickly into ArcGIS. And Rob, if you would now take over and walk us through that batch import process, as well as some of the conditional alert capabilities when monitoring real-time feeds.
Absolutely. I know this might not sound all that exciting, but for those of you that have lived this, you feel the pain, and hopefully you appreciate this tool. So batch import, which is located under the data tab right here, we'll show that in a second, but I think a lot of analysts get sent data in all types of formats, and there's some kind of spatial element within that. So that could be a geodatabase, KMZ, KML, a text file, shape file, CSV, XLS, XLSX, and that gets thrown at you, and you need to go try to find the right tool and get into a geodatabase and organize it. So probably one of my favorite things about ProIntel with batch import is in one fell swoop, I could open up this tool, and then we're going to point to the file location, and it's just going to bring everything in and put it in a geodatabase for us. So go here. I'm just going to go to my exercise A, which is that folder we just saw with all that information. And then you just select your output. So go to my databases. I have a batch import geodatabase set aside. Hit OK. I'm going to hit run. That takes a couple minutes. I'm going to skip past that and just show you what it looks like when you're done. So it brings in all this data and throws it on the map. Just uses whatever symbology Pro feels like assigning it. And now it's in your map and database. And those feature classes are all organized within the geodatabase for you. So this saves tons and tons of time. Now, for those of you that need to transfer information and you want your symbology standards to go with that data, what we can also do, let me show you exercise B. So same data set, but what we've done now is we have this the layer X file that's in here that just captures the symbology for all of these data sets. And same thing, I go to batch import and point to that folder, bring it in, and once I bring it in, it assigns that symbology automatically. So that's what it looks like for the sheriff's department, and we'll look at the districts for the sheriff's department. There's some light rail stops. All those are symbolized. We can look at Sacramento PD crime. We'll put that in like it's in a green color, and then the sheriff's department is like in a pinkish color, and then some schools. So just some random data information around Sacramento County. But that just brought it all in, same thing. It put it into a geodatabase for me. But it applied that symbology. So just a great way to save time and help analysts out and just get this stuff into the map. So that way you can do what you want to do, and that's analyze your data. Last but not least, before we run out of time here, is conditions and alerts. So conditions and alerts is located under the data tab right here, little bell icon. So I'm going to open that up. And I want to create, so what conditions and alerts does is it looks at your data to identify relationships. So what I want to do is create an inside the boundary condition. So what I want to look at is, let's go ahead and look at, so this is coming from NOAA, this storm information. So let's look at hailstorms. And we're going to just go ahead and use Nebraska as our input area. Okay. And I can run this condition. And up here in the corner, you can see it's thinking. And now I get a toast notification in the upper right-hand corner of my screen. So I can click on that, and that just opens up the alerts panel within conditions and alerts. And to tell me that the condition was met, that activity is occurring, I can click on it, double click, and it's going to highlight and zoom to those incidents. So obviously there's hail that's going to be happening in Nebraska. Now, if I wanted to set this up, I can actually create a reoccurrence. So I don't want to know if there's hail in Nebraska every 5 minutes. Actually, let's do this. Let's, I don't know, let's go like 3 hours or something. So what's going to happen is if I have Pro open and I'm working and I'm doing other things, this runs in the background, and every 3 hours it's going to check for this. And then if that condition's met, I'll get a toast notification to let me know in the upper right-hand corner that condition was met. If I was away at lunch and I come back, I can always come in here to alerts and check to see if I missed anything. But it's just a great way to monitor data, especially dynamic data, for things that you care about for your mission. So that's conditions and alerts. And with that, and we're almost out of time, so I will turn it back over to you, Carl, for any remaining questions.
Yes, we have a few questions and a couple minutes to address. I'll handle the first one, and this question just came in. Will this video be available, and can we share it? The answer to that is yes. You will all be provided with a URL to a YouTube video, and you can do what you want with it. An additional question came in, and probably Natalie, this is maybe best for you. Do the Pro Intel tools come with the crime analysis toolbar? What's the difference, and how do we get both?
Okay, good question. So crime analysis is a collection of useful tools that that the team that builds the crime analysis tools worked with the community and compiled those all into a single toolbar for Pro. We've worked with the team to incorporate all of those tools, every single one of them, into Pro Intel. We don't have a crime analysis toolbar because we've just put those tools where we think they belong within the ribbons that are within Pro Intel. So if you look in the analysis tab, you can see the incident path, for instance, or the cell phone patterns. All those are coming from the crime analysis tool set. And every release of Pro Intel, we include the newest version of the crime analysis tools with it.
Perfect. And Ray, if you allow me to share my screen, I'll switch to our closing slides. A couple closing comments. We did get a couple questions in that were more complex, and we probably need to respond to that either via phone call or by a private email. So for those of you that have asked questions, we will get back to you. One of the most important asks that we have from you is for you to help guide us in how we continue to build and evolve these tools. You guys have access to a questionnaire and access to ask us additional questions. If you have additional requirements that you're interested in talking to us about or exploring, it's as simple as writing them down on that survey. And the two people that are going to be looking at those are the people that collect these requirements and help agencies deploy, and Natalie, the individual that runs the team that actually builds these tools for you folks. We are about at the top of the hour. I will stop there, and please accept our thanks and gratitude for everybody participating, and enjoy the rest of your day.